expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL. However, we do encourage you to like and share them and subscribe to WPSL TV on YouTube and share this on Facebook. It's time for the Sue Ellen Sanders Show with Sue Ellen Sanders.
Welcome to the Sue Ellen Sanders Show, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about today's subject, as I'm sure you are too. Kevin Singletary is with me today, and he is the Kids at Hope coordinator for the St. Lucie County Roundtable, or the Roundtable of St. Lucie County. And we were just chatting just a little bit before the show started, and talking about it. Kevin's been around in town for a long time, and people see him or hear his name and say, hey, we know that guy, and you may think you know what Kids at Hope is, but maybe your reference to it is those Kids at Hope tunnels that the kids go through that usually you see in the news at the beginning of school. So today we're going to meet Kevin, talk to him, and also find all about Kids at Hope and the Roundtable of St. Lucie County. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, to begin with, the Roundtable of St. Lucie County. If you are a part of social service arena, or if you are with the police department, the fire district, the sheriff's department, and a city councilman, a county commissioner, any elected official, or social service agency, as I said, you probably are familiar with the Roundtable of St. Lucie County. But if you're not, Kevin, how would you describe the Roundtable? It's a meeting of minds.
It's a meeting of minds, definitely, but it's a meeting of some of the top leaders in the county. Surprisingly, Sue Ellen, I'm asked a lot, what is the Roundtable? And I said, well, I work for the Roundtable. And they go, what is the Roundtable? The Roundtable is comprised of 31 or 32 top leaders in the county. When I say that, I'm talking executive directors, CEOs, the sheriff, the mayors, police chiefs, elected officials comprise our board. So these are the people that are truly making the policies in the community. But they have a common goal, and the common goal is to mobilize resources for the care of every child in St. Lucie County. And when I say care, I'm talking education, nutrition, safety, and their individual and personal development as a human. So that's the commitment from all of these executive directors and leaders, that every child in St. Lucie County can live and live well.
How is it different? And I know it is different because the Children's Services Council is a different type of entity, but how is Children's Services Council and the Roundtable different?
Different, I think we're very common. The CSC, Children's Services Council, they actually fund a good portion of Kids at Hope. So they fund a lot of the youth after-school programs. So they're involved in the funding side.
They're the money men.
Yes. And what we do is we work with a lot with youth development. The Boys and Girls Club is the primary youth development in the county, but we work with them as well because, as you know, at ELC, we have to have a lot of community partners in order for this ship to sail. So we work together, and each person plays a part with a common goal in mind. And as I said, that is the development of every child in St. Lucie County.
And also the fact that all of the CEOs and executive directors and sheriff department, police department, elected officials, school board, from the school board to city and county officials, they all sit on the board, and so they all have a say, and it's kind of at the collective meeting of minds, and you meet. The Roundtable itself meets monthly, and then there's an agenda of items that they cover, including usually something that is most of note in St. Lucie County. There's usually an informational component to the Roundtable, and people can come to the roundtable meetings and kind of sit in what I call the cheap seats. And they can find out more by going to the Roundtable of St. Lucie County's website.
Right. And the address for the website is www.roundtableslc.com. And you can get all the information about the roundtable, a lot about the history, how it was developed, and where we're going, because that's very important to understand that there's definitely a vision for today. We started yesterday, but there's definitely a vision for today.
And, of course, if you want to remember that the round table represents all the different players, you think of everybody sitting around a round table, even though I think the table's actually rectangle or square, but that's okay. And the programs that the round table coordinates are some of them are new, some of them are developing, and some of them were initial programs that give us a little bit of history of what came first.
Wow, that's a tough question. I'll put it this way. I've been with the Roundtable 3 years, but I've worked with the Roundtable in other employments for years. Just to kind of give you a background how I got involved with working with youth and teens, I moved to Fort Pierce in 92. I finished my time in the Army, and initially I've always worked nonprofit, and I've always worked with children. My first job in St. Lucie County, I worked for the Drug Abuse Treatment Association on Selvets data. And from there, I moved to Eckers Youth Alternatives, working with children that were considered juvenile delinquents. And then I went to Alpi Head Start, Early Head Start, with early childhood development. And from there, I transitioned over to the Roundtable and the Kids at Hope program. So I've seen children at every level, from early childhood development to the ones that were one step away from going to the Department of Corrections for a long time. So I've seen kids in a lot of different capacities.
And the round table is the overall program part of decision-making body that helps to guide the programs, and Kids at Hope is one of the programs. Give us a little bit of a history about Kids at Hope.
Well, Kids at Hope, one of the exciting things about St. Lucie County is that we were the first county outside of the state of Arizona, which is the home of Kids at Hope under Rick Miller, to be designated as a Kids at Hope county.
What does that mean?
What that means is that we have adopted the framework of Kids at Hope. Kids at Hope is, first of all, it's not a program. So Rick really drives that home when you go to the training out in Arizona. But it is a philosophical framework. It is a strategic framework where we're changing the culture. And what I mean by the changing the culture is we want to change the mindset from taking kids at risk to understanding that every child has hope. And part of the slogan is, all children are capable of success, no exception. Now, to get people to buy into that, you have to change a lot of mindsets, because it's very easy to say a child that's born into poverty, single-parent mom, on public assistance, this is a child at risk. But we look at it as we have to dig a little deeper to uncover that gold, that diamond in the rough, and say this is a child at hope. So that's our mandate, to find the gold, to find the treasure, the hidden diamond in every child.
So basically, Kids at Hope is all about finding the positive in the child and not fighting the negative.
Right. We don't accentuate the negative, but we don't ignore the negative as well, because you have to do some behavior correction, behavior modification in order to get the best out of the child. And I think as adults, we have to look back on our childhood that we didn't do everything right. There were times of correction. But when we look at Kids at Hope, we don't want to label them, because one of the things, when you begin to label children, you begin to limit them, because people will then put them in these proverbial boxes. And that's one of the things that we don't want to do. We don't want to put a child in a box. What we want that child to do is flourish within the parameters which have been established by their parents or their guardians.
Are all the Kids at Hope from at-risk populations? Or, I mean, because I remember as a teacher, when I was first trained at Kids at Hope, I was over at Forest Grove Middle School, and it was almost like drinking the Kool-Aid. You walked out of that training feeling like you were looking at the kids in your class with different colored glasses. But all of them, including the kids that came from two-parent homes where they had, enough money and they were never food insecure, because some of the worst behaving kids were also the kids that weren't from at-risk situations.
We Earlier this year we were doing a study on some numbers based with the Boys and Girls Club, and one of the unique things about the study was determining. I'll talk a little bit more about the individual components of Kids at Hope, but it's about a child feeling supported. And the funny thing is, the kids that were mostly come from the impoverished parts of St. Lucie County, they felt supported. But the kids that came from more of the middle class and affluent said they didn't feel supported.
That's interesting.
Because what they feel, they had things, but they didn't have a person. So I'm kind of crossing some of the things that I'm trained at. I'm also a Bridges Out of Poverty facilitator. And one of the common factor with children in poverty, the binding thing is relationships. So people in poverty, relationships are very important to them. The middle class, it's about achievement. And then the wealth class, it's about traditions. So when you look at that, people in poverty might not have things, but relationships are most important to them.
Mm-hmm.
Middle class, they're trying to get to the next level. And in the training, one of the things we say, if mom and dad had a three bedroom home, when I get there, I got to have at least a 4-bedroom home with a 2-car garage, because I have to exceed what the generation ahead of me. And then people in wealth, the thing is that we have to maintain the proper traditions and the proper connections, because we have to be properly connected to get to the next level. So when we look at that with Kids at Hope, this is what I love about the roundtable. This goes right in line with the Bridges concept. You need everyone at the table to make decisions, because you have to have people to write checks. You have to have people to enforce the policies, and then you have the recipients of what was written in the policies. But when you bring everyone to the table, and you said it earlier, you used the term looking at it from everyone's lens, then you get a complete picture. And that's the purpose of the roundtable. If we can get a complete picture, and I love the concept of the roundtable, because there's no one sitting at the head of the table.
Mm-hmm.
We're all equal at the
Yes.
table.
Yeah. And, to go back to the roundtable for a minute, too, the goals, perhaps, of the sheriff's department may not be the same as the goals of, for example, the school district or the city of Port St. Lucie or one of the other social service agency heads that's sitting at the table. Everyone may have different specific directions they're going in, but you find the common ground of what's important and work together toward that.
I think of it in terms of like our body. There are parts of our body we will never see, but when it's hurting, we know that it hurts.
Yeah.
You if you stub your toe, then you realize, okay, I got a pinky toe. That's a sharp pain.
But otherwise, you don't notice it's there. Yeah.
So when we think about that as an entire entity in the county, there are parts that we don't think about, but if that part is hurting, then we start feeling the pain.
Mm-hmm.
So what can I do to help alleviate the pain, or to provide some services to take the load off of someone else? Because the end objective is for all kids to live well in St. Lucie County. And I love what we say, there are no exceptions in Kids at Hope, because a lot of people tend to want to say, okay, what if this child has some type of disability? What if this child is this? The what if question comes up. But it says all children are capable of success. Success for Sue Ellen is not necessarily going to be success for Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
So success for Roger is not going to be the success for Roy, and for Jane, for Sue. So when we look at that, everyone's level of success is different. That's the thing. All children are capable of success.
Mm-hmm. And success, as you said, is measured in many different ways and in many different minds. So to get back to the Kids at Hope program, how long ago did you guys start doing the tunnels, which were the tunnels of hope, which kick off the school year each year? And this year, the tunnels looked a little different. We'll talk about that too. But how long has that been going on?
Well, I've been on board 3 years, but when I was working at Alpi, they had the tunnels going. So the tunnels have been around for a while. And I think what it is that jolt of energy at the beginning of the year. They need that cheering on because they've had the entire summer. And I think this year,
And then some.
and then some. And this year, I think the tunnels are more important than ever this year because of what the kids experienced at the end of last year and going through all of the different changes. You know, a lot of people use the term our new norm. I think that still has been left to be determined. All we know is that the world is changing right in front of our eyes. So we're having to make adjustments. But the kids, they don't get that socialization when they had to go home and they didn't get to be with their friends. I have 2 grandkids that live here. They miss their friends dearly. But that is a part of this changes that we're going through. But to be able to give them that encouraging word at the beginning of the year, I think that's very, very important.
So you have volunteers that usually are part of the Tunnels at Hope, but it was a little limited this year as to who you could have and where they could stand. And of course, traditionally, when my kids went through a Tunnel of Hope, there were a lot of high fives from everybody who was there holding up signs. No high fives this year.
No high fives. A lot of waving.
Uh-huh.
Everyone's wearing masks. We're socially doing the social distancing 6 feet apart. But some of the community leaders are still been present. Mr. Gent was at the opening tunnel. Sheriff Mascara's been out. Some of the top personnel at the school district has been there. But something else that we did this year that was, I call it being innovative, we're doing a video tunnel as well for the children that are staying at home.
I was wondering about them.
So the fire district, the sheriff department, the Boys and Girls Club, and Ignite Youth Alliance, which at some point I'll talk about. That's a component up under the roundtable that Kids at Hope works with in a various capacity. But they all agreed to do recordings and do tunnels for the kids. So Chief Sparrow was excellent. He got his administrative staff out. We lined up. I took the video camera, walked through as I was a child, but they had the signs and it was like, welcome back, great job, you can do it. Very encouraging. Same thing with the sheriff department. And some did individual messages to the kids.
So you had the video Tunnels of Hope too. And that's a neat idea to walk through just like you were a child, because then they get the bird's eye view of if they were going through the tunnel themselves.
Exactly. And the sheriff department, I mean, the community partners were just ecstatic in doing it. They were all for it because we have to be innovative in this time. One of the things in Kids at Hope, it's the same by Mark Twain, says that we can't solve today's problems with yesterday's thinking. And see, we're in an automated world. We're in a world where computers and everything happens so fast in real time. News, you get a news feed on your phone immediately. We know newspapers are totally different. You read newspapers online. You're not waiting for the paper boy to deliver your paper anymore. So we have to also think how we're going to solve problems today at today's speed, because our children have access to information at the drop of a dime. So we have to always be thinking. I always have to upgrade my level of thinking. And I'm just saying that individually. I'm just saying that's part of the roundtable, Kids at Hope. How are we going to stay ahead? And I remember Stephen Jobs, the founder of Microsoft. No, Bill Gates. One of the things they said, Bill Gates, they asked him once, they said, how do you stay ahead of everyone else? He said, I'm thinking 5 years ahead of everyone else.
So he's playing chess instead of playing checkers.
Right.
Which is a mindset that you develop.
And as Kids at Hope, we want to change the mindset. Our children aren't at risk. They might be in a bad situation. See, their situation doesn't determine their hope. The situation could be at risk, but the hope is internal, and then that's where we as caring adults, and that's part of it. The 3 universal truths, I guess I didn't cover this in Kids at Hope, and this is the easy way. Might not an easy way, but this is what it stands for. First thing is that we have to believe that all children are capable of success, no exceptions. We have to take the exceptionalities out.
That's first and foremost.
The second universal truth is that children do better when they have a meaningful and sustainable relationship with a caring adult. Because a lot of our children have had people that have come into their lives and depart. Someone else come into their lives. That's why we said meaningful and sustainable. And the last concept of Kids at Hope, universal truth, is that children have to be able to time travel. And what time travel simply means, these children, where they're at today, they start looking towards their future. They come back here and says, this is what I need to do to get to that end objective. So what's the end goal in mind? And that's where, as treasure hunters, that's where we help them to try to get to their end goal. I might come out of the projects. I might be and in my case, I'm the 7th child born in the projects. But I don't have to have a project mentality. I can have a mentality that I want to do something and make a difference in the world. So what are we going to do as caring adults to help this child that wants to change his or her situation and do something to help other people?
How about children who don't want to change?
That's a tough one when people say kids don't want to change. Personally, I just don't believe that.
Yeah, I was going to say, because deep down inside, they may say they don't want to change, but deep down inside, they want those things that you were talking about. They want to be able to time travel. They want to be able to have a caring adult in their life. They want to have no exception, to be the success at whatever level they measure. They want all those things.
Right, because one of the things I think that we have to break, you mentioned that you were a former educator, and we use the term SMART. In Kids at Hope, I love, and this is where I get a lot of my passion for Kids at Hope, the definition of SMART. It simply says, what does this child have that the world needs? See, that makes everyone smart, not the intellect. Not how well they do on the SATs and necessarily how well they do in the classroom. It's what does this person have that the world needs? And in training, I use this example. If your air conditioner goes out in the middle of the night on an August day in Florida, are you going to call the college professor to your house, or are you going to call the AC repair guy? The AC repair guy has the gifts and the talents to fix your air conditioning, and that's going to satisfy you that night and your family. Mm-hmm. Calling the college professor, who might have 3 PhDs, is not going to get the job done. So everyone brings something to the table. So it's a matter of helping that child discover what's unique about you that the world needs, that only you can give to the world.
And, when you talk about caring adults, too, a lot of times you are talking, and one of the reasons that you do the Kids at Hope training for teachers, and actually I had it, I was like one of those teachers who looked for the proper fit, and because I came out of the communications field, there wasn't really a proper fit for me. I tried elementary school, I tried middle school for a year, and then I taught for about 4 years in high school before I realized that really the perfect fit was in communications. And so now I'm blessed that I'm doing communications, and I'm doing it in the education field. So I've got the best of all worlds. But as an educator, for 4 years, I was also an English teacher for high school, and I was also a cross-country coach. And I found that the people I touched and were able to help and change through cross-country were much greater than the amount of students I was able to reach through teaching.
Well, I think sometimes what we have to find with children is that common denominator. A lot of times when people say I'm a mentor, and that's one of the things, that's another thing I'm very passionate about, is trying to find someone that does proper mentoring. Because, see, a lot of people just want to share their stories with kids. But mentoring to me, this is just my personal definition, is that I invite you into my world, you invite me into your world, and then we find a common bond. Because if I can't get into the world of this kid, I'm not trying to be a 15-year-old, but at some point I have to connect with this 15-year-old. So what's a common thing that we have, a common bond? Sometimes it can be something just as simple as cooking. Or you made a comment when you came in. You said, you like my socks. Well, I wear colorful socks. There are young men that like colorful socks. And it could be something just as simple as that. Our common denominator is that we both like colorful socks. And that can forge the beginning of the relationship, because I found a common denominator amongst us.
That's interesting. And so you can find common denominators wherever you are. And you don't, when we talk about, that the Kids at Hope training that I got at elementary school talked about the four ACEs and the different meaningful relationships that could form with the student. And when you look around in a school in a lifetime setting for a child, depending on their age, they maybe have the custodial staff that they have, a little friendship with as they're coming in. The people who work in the cafeteria, the guidance counselor, the coaches, maybe just a teacher they pass in the hall every day that says hello to them in a friendly voice, that the type of relationship that they know that they can count on, and that, maybe they'll go to if they have an issue. But just having that person. And, you were saying that sometimes they don't have that person at home. Well, very frequently, and as a parent of two young adults, and I'm sure you remember these years too, when my kids were teenagers, even though they had two parents at home, they didn't listen to either one of them. We didn't know anything in their eyes, and we just got smarter as they got a little bit older. But they needed to have somebody else in their life that could give them advice and that could talk to them, because they were trying to expand their world, and their world didn't revolve around home anymore.
And that's interesting, because my daughter, she'll be 27 next month. Wow. But she played high school basketball. And that was the person she really adored, her coach. So during those high school years, a lot was left on the coach, because dad was just being dad. I was just being the too stuffy of the dad. But she had a lot of respect for her basketball coach. And you said
Was it Wendell Adams?
No, she didn't go to LPA. She went to Westwood.
Okay.
But you said something like, when I was in elementary school, my two aces in elementary school, I had excellent teachers. I grew up in South Carolina. But my two aces was and you mentioned them. Mr. Flood, he was the head custodian. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Flood was really tall. And I remember he was like 6'4". That was really, it was gigantic to me being in first grade. But the thing about Mr. Flood was we always felt safe. Yeah. All the kids felt safe around Mr. Flood. And then the cafeteria, the head lady in the cafeteria was Miss McAllister.
And you remember their names?
Because I was reared by my grandmother,
yeah.
my grandparents. And Miss McAllister, in the cafeteria, you felt like you were going to grandma's house every day for lunch, because she made it that kind of atmosphere. The food was excellent.
I hope at some point you told her that.
Well,
maybe
I was
went
young
back
then.
years later.
But I'm Facebook friends with my second grade teacher.
Awesome.
She's still around, and my favorite teacher, he and his wife, they were both my teachers. But I'm Facebook friends with them today. They're all retired, of course. But see, the impact they had, and that's something we talk about in Kids at Hope in the training, is called the truth of the moment, or a moment of truth. And one of the things it says that a moment of truth doesn't have to last a long time, but it could last a lifetime. Mm-hmm. And we have to understand that every encounter with a child is a moment of truth, because in that moment you can change that child's life forever.
And you don't know that it's not something that that's the moment that they're choosing to remember. You don't always know on either end, the child or teenager or the mentor. You don't know that this was the keeper. This was the changer, the life changer.
We had an experience 2 weeks ago, my wife and I. We went to a local establishment to get some food after our worship experience. And a young man in there that I had when I was a delinquency counselor, I mentioned that I did delinquency. He stepped up and he said, "Your money's no good today." And I'm like, "What are you doing?" He said, I'm paying for you and your wife's dinner." He said, "I appreciate what you did for me when I was a kid." Now, this young man ended up actually going to prison. But now he has a very, very successful business. He's married, has his children, and he's running a very successful business in St. Lucie County. But as a 15-year-old teenager, he said, "Mr. Singletary, I appreciated what you did for me when I was 15 years old. So today I'm going to buy you and your wife's dinner."
And it just really makes a difference in your life too. Not that people who mentor, people who are in a young person, and when I say young person, it could be, birth through, 30 or even older, life, they don't always know that they're the ones that are making a difference in the life until later. And then when you do, and you certainly didn't do it so they would buy you dinner 20 years later. Yeah.
Exactly. I look at it this way now with the age that I'm at and having grandchildren and have worked with kids all these years. I look at children as being seed. But we don't know. When I see this child's a seed that one day is going to be a forest. So this child's a seed that's one day is going to be an orchard. Because every child is a seed, but you don't know what it's going to blossom into. All you know is you play your part while you have that child under your care. If it's this season of my life just to be some fertilizer for this child, then that's what I do. Because eventually someone else is going to come along and they're going to add the water and all the other nutrients, and preferably this child will blossom to be who or she supposed to be. So I just want to do my part with every seed that comes into my life.
And I do know, as an educator, I do know about some of the kids whose lives I felt like I touched, or their parents told them, or they told me. But there's nothing that makes me happier than to hear it later from somebody else, and to maintain those friendships and know that some of the kids I taught in middle school or high school still reach out years later and ask me for college references, even though I haven't been their teacher for a while, because they felt that they had a connection with me, and that makes me feel good. But we're talking about the different types of mentors, and the mentors can be that they don't necessarily have to be in your school life. They could be like big brothers, big sisters. They could be somebody you see after school. But they also can be, your friend's mother or father, or they could be with big brothers, big sisters. You have an assigned mentor that you grow with. But all of those kids, the common thread is that they not need, but have to succeed, those mentors in their lives.
Right. In Kids Adult, we have 4. You have the anchor parent, and that's the person that's responsible for taking care of that child 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You have the other caring adults, and that's what we were speaking of. Those other people in your child's life that helps to add to them. Mm-hmm. Another ace that they have is they have someone that sets high expectations. And I can remember Miss Reese. She was my Algebra 2 trigonometry teacher. And she would not give up on me. She wanted it more for me than I wanted for myself. And then you have those ones that present opportunities for children to be successful. And that's that 4th ace in their life. So children need those. They need someone that's going to be that anchor that they know is not going to depart. Another caring adult outside of the home. A lot of times I do hear kids say, well, my caring adult is my mom, my dad. And I try to get them to identify someone outside of the family. Because families, it's always unique, but there are a lot of unique situations with families. But who's that person that sets a high expectation? Who's not going to let that child, as an educator, that child's best might be a B, but they're making a C, but they're capable of a B. That I'm going to set that high expectation and push them. And then I'm going to give them opportunities to be successful. I was a basketball coach. I've coached youth basketball. I like to do the developmental stages, not where you keep score, because I want them to get fundamentals. As a teacher, there's certain fundamentals you got to have. You got to be able to, you got to know your ABCs to read and write and multiply, add and divide, things of that nature. But I remember a game. I had some girls on my team. It was a co-ed team. And they weren't very good at basketball, but they came to practice every day. They gave me 100% every time they came. And we were in a tournament in Vero, and my better players were slacking off. I pulled them all out of the game, and I put the girls in that weren't that good. I said, give me the best that you have. And they were almost like, you really going to put us in the game in the middle of crunch time? They were blown away by the fact that I was putting them in the game. But the surprising thing, Sue Ellen, I put these girls in that really didn't know basketball. They brought our team back because they just couldn't believe I had that kind of faith in them. I said, just give me your best. And these girls, and they did. And they brought us back. I think we eventually won the game. And it was also a lesson to the better players to know that arrogance and cockiness is not going to get you what you want.
And that they were not indispensable.
Right. And we are part of a team.
Yeah.
And that was always my concept. The team. Together, everyone achieves more. If their parents brought them to practice, everybody was going to play the same amount of time. So I didn't care about the score. I didn't care about no superstars and all that. I wanted each child to feel special. And that was what I tried to do with that team.
Well, when you mentioned the four aces that a child can have in their life, one of the things that we didn't talk about were people that are in a church or synagogue, or Sunday school teacher, or people that a child might have a relationship with every Sunday or Wednesday at youth group, or have that type of friendship where their faith is also strengthened through that friendship.
It's funny you said that. I started out as an elementary ed major. I wanted to be an elementary school teacher. That changed. But I still, as I gave my history, I'm always working with children. But there was someone in my church that impressed me. He never had a title. He was not like a deacon or a Sunday school teacher. And like I said, I was reared by my grandparents, so I was around a lot of elderly people when I was a child in my developmental stage. His name was Mr. Prince. But every Sunday after church, he would ask us a Bible question. If you got it right, you could get a gumdrop. And I think you remember the gumdrops.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
Mr. Prince, and that sparked my study of my faith, because I wanted to know something about the Bible so I could get a gumdrop. And that has stuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I find myself doing that with kids in my church. And I actually was over youth ministry for like 15 years. But that was my thing that started me wanting to work with kids, was what Mr. Prince used to do when I was a little boy.
And who knew at the time that was happening that was going to be a life-altering moment for you, that Mr. Prince was going to be one of those people that created that life-altering moment for you, for some little kid that was maybe just one of 20 that every Sunday after church he would ask a question to. So you never know.
And that's what we talk about, that moment of truth. He's a motivational speaker and trainer, Ferris Hill. He talked about his story, and he's come here to St. Lucie County. He visited a few schools. But what happened was, back in the day, when I say back in the day, he's older than me. The word we don't use anymore begins with an R. They used to label kids that. And so he went to classes in the basement. And his fourth grade teacher came to him one day and brought him a briefcase. And she said, "Young man, you are a businessman." And she gave him the briefcase. And he said that was the defining moment in his life. He said someone finally believed in him. He said by the end of that year, he had worked himself out of the basement back into regular classes. He graduated in the top 10% of his high school class, and he has an earned PhD today. But he said the defining moment was when his fourth grade teacher said, "You are a businessman," and gave him a briefcase. And he said that's the day he started acting like a
And
businessman.
set those expectations. Yeah, and one of the things that we referred to earlier is not necessarily if you're coming from a broken home or from poverty or anything, that you may just need to hear that good news, a positive thing about yourself from somebody other than your parents, because it means so much more when you hear it. When the teacher says you're going to make a success of yourself. My 7th grade teacher, who told me I was a writer, and then I've spent a lifetime being a writer, but my mom told me I was a writer for 10 years before that, but it wasn't until Mr. Reader told me that I believed him, that I believed somebody. Because a lot of times the people around you in your close inner circle, if you're lucky enough to have that, they say things because you're theirs and they think you're wonderful and you look so pretty to them and you are so smart to them. You're the best that you could be. But to somebody else who's on the outside, when they say that to you, then it becomes real.
That's part of being a treasure hunter. And that's one of the things that we talk about in Kids at Hope is for adults to become treasure hunters. And we make a commitment as an adult, as a treasure hunter. You said as an adult and a treasure hunter that you're committed to search for the talents, the skills, and intelligence that exist in all children and youth. All children are capable of success, no exceptions. So you're looking for that talent inside that child. Because sometimes, like the writing, it's a talent. As you go to school, as you go further in education, they teach you how to hone your skills in that area, but it's a talent. We look for the skills and the intelligence. I shared this story about two of my friends I grew up with, and we've been friends really from our diaper days. Yeah, we grew up in the same neighborhood. They're 6 months older than me. But Ronald and Donald, they were twins that went to school. Donald did better academically than Ronald, but Ronald's skill set was not the books. Ronald's gift is his hands. And today, Ronald has ran 4 successful businesses because he used his talents and his skills, which are his hands. He's a mechanic. He's a cook. He wires cars. So there's a lot of things Ronald can do I can't do because that's not my skill set. That's not my talent. So I share that story a lot so that kids can know that what did Ronald have that the world needs? It was his hands. What did Donald have that the world needs? It was his intellect. They're twins, but totally different.
When you talk about expectations, too, a lot of times you're labeled. And it may not be a academic label or a personality label. It may be, well, she's the smart one. She's the funny one. He's the athletic one. And then you move toward that label and you leave the other things behind because you say, well, you know, it's not my fault that I'm not good at basketball because I'm the smart one.
Or if you're tall, that everyone assumes you play basketball.
Oh, yeah. Or volleyball if you're...
Yeah, or you swim.
Yeah.
Just because you're tall.
Yeah.
And then people say, oh, you sure are tall. Because one of my good friends, his son dealt with that, but he happens to be an excellent basketball player. But as a child, it bothered him. Because, I mean, he was really tall. He was actually taller than his teacher in preschool.
Oh, my goodness.
He's like 6'10", 6'11" now. But, yeah, in elementary school, he was taller than his teacher. He was just always a tall. But that was the thing. But one thing I noticed, after he would score a basket, he would run back down the court with his head down. Because it was almost like trying to shrink himself. Because all people would remember, all they would say is he's tall. But they didn't realize that he was an excellent student. And there was more to him than just basketball and his height. So, you know, like you said, he was just labeled a tall basketball player, but actually he was an excellent student. And that part of his life was never, ever examined. So that's why, like you said, we have to be careful what labels we put on children. And as treasure hunters, part of our job is the stuff that's packed on top of a kid, we're supposed to dig it up and excavate that stuff. We got to get some of the trash off of it so we can get to the diamond that's underneath.
So we can get to the good stuff.
Yes.
So how can the community help?
The community can help. Well, what we offer a lot of services to the community. We offer Kids at Hope trainings to the community. So if you've never been training Kids at Hope, go on our website. Well, the easiest way right now, because we're working from home, I'll just, is to contact me via phone, and my number is 772-979-1575. That's Kevin Singletary. Once again, it's 772-979-1575. We offer community trainings with Kids at Hope. We offer parent trainings through Kids at Hope.
So you don't have to be a teacher or work in a school. You could be a member of the community, and then you train maybe homeowners associations or church groups or clubs.
Well, part of changing the culture is getting the information out across the entire county. We don't want to leave anyone out. And that's one of the things, our goal with Kids at Hope is to expand. A lot of people think we're just limited to the school system.
Right.
Because a lot of people think I work for the school board. I don't work for the school board, I work for the Round Table. We've gone into faith-based organizations. We've gone into child care facilities. Anyone working with kids in any capacity. Because you said something that to be an ACE doesn't necessarily mean you work directly with a child. We train the city of Port St. Lucie. So my coworker, she was training the city, and one guy says, well, I'm in the maintenance department. I cut the grass. But she says, what is your interaction with children? He said, I don't have anything. He said, all I do is I wave to the kids as they come into the gym for the after-school program. She said, well, then there's your interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Said, you might be the only friendly face that child has seen all day, or that child's expecting that wave from the guy on the lawnmower.
Right.
So you could be making a difference because that might be the last smiling face that child sees for the day. So sometimes, like you said, the small things are the important things. We work with Ignite Youth Alliance. That's one of the components up under the roundtable. And these are the young men and young women that are being exposed to being gang involvement. Some want to get out of the gangs, or the gangs are trying to recruit them. So their work with that group is called Ignite Youth Alliance. What we do with Kids at Hope is something that I do. It's called the Nurturing Fathers Program. Most of our teen programs dealt with the teen moms. We took the approach, let's talk to the teen fathers. So I'm a certified nurturing fatherhood facilitator. So we began a class for the teen fathers.
That's really interesting because nobody ever talks about the fathers. They always talk about what the mothers have to deal with it. But for every teenage mother, there is a teenage father, even if he's not necessarily hands-on and in the child's life.
Right, but he's still a father.
He's still there.
Yeah. So that's something we try to do innovative. That's another community opportunity there. We have the Nurturing Fathers program. We have something called Youth Leadership St. Lucie. We work with kids from 9 through 12th grade. Any child, any school. The minimum requirement is a 2.5 GPA. It could be public, private school, or they could be homeschool. We've had 2 years in a row the valedictorian from Treasure Coast High School, but we've had former gang members in youth leadership. See, it's not where you start. It's about the end goal.
Where you end. And so some of my favorite high school students were part of your youth leadership. It gave them an opportunity beyond their scope of their school or their soccer team to show that they were a leader and to be trained as a leader, too, and to connect with the community. And I know they loved it. They love the program.
And they get to be an advocate for what teenagers want to see in our community. Because a lot of people put them off until tomorrow. But one thing that we emphasize in youth leadership, you're present today. That means you're relevant today. And your voice needs to be heard today. So they have helped to design. They've gone before the county commission. They've gone before the city commission. They've done public service announcements. They do community service projects. And we're just getting ready to adopt one of the parks in Port St. Lucie. So that's going to be a park that the youth leadership is responsible for cleaning once a month.
And, you know, they also, into their college years, that youth leadership experience stays with them because it helps guide them and look for the leadership opportunities in other things. Also, I know the students working against tobacco, for example, that group of the students who talk to the kids at their school, it means more coming from another student when there's an adult saying don't do drugs or don't smoke cigarettes or don't vape, or, you know, adults are full of don't. But when one of the kids in your class is saying it instead, it's more meaningful.
Right. So that's the third component that we have is called Drug Free St. Lucie. And our youth leadership is working with Drug Free St. Lucie. They just did a PSA announcement, and we got the teens to critique the PSA, the final product. So they had a lot of strong opinions because it's like some of this will appeal to us and some of it won't. And I love that they are authentic, they're very open, and they're very honest. And that's what we need. If we're going to appeal to them, we need to know what they like and what they dislike.
Mm-hmm. Because they'll tell you. If they're teenagers, once you've gained their trust and they understand that you're trying to work with them and show them the best in life, or they show you the best in life, then they'll tell you what they think, and they tell you what is meaningful to them and what is not. And as an adult, some of the very things that I thought were most meaningful to my teenagers were actually the least.
I realized after, like I said, being reared by my grandparents for the third time, I mentioned that he had a lot more wisdom than I thought he did, because now I'm on the other side. But I just want to share this about Kids at Hope. Kids at Hope is not just a kids program. It's not a program. It is for the entire family. As you can see, we have everything from parents to young adults to teens to infants and youth. We cover the gamut, and I would just admonish the community to use what's at your disposal. Kids at Hope is here for the entire community and for the entire family.
I love the concept of digging for the treasure. And as you said, it's not necessarily digging for the treasure for just a young child. It could be a teenager or it could be a young adult. And that's important. And I just want to tell you, as for the years that I spent in education, you could always tell the kids who were being reared by their grandparents because they were the most polite in the classroom. I don't know what that says about the generation, but to a fault, you could see, because Grandma and Grandpa taught them manners. The kids that said yes sir, yes ma'am, followed the directions, were rule followers for the most part, had grandparents in their life.
Well, I was reared in a southern home, so that was definitely the expectation. And part of the thing that we're trying to change the culture is we change the language. And what I mean by that, sometimes what people see as a negative in a child is actually a positive in a child. So just be careful what you say to the child, because your words carry a lot of weight.
And that's important to remember. Kevin Singletary is the Kids at Hope coordinator for the Roundtable of St. Lucie County. And there's a lot of ways that you can find out more about either the Roundtable of St. Lucie County or the Kids at Hope program or any of the other programs that we talked about here. One of the best ways is to go to the website or to like them on Facebook and check out their social media. And get information, whether you just want to see what they're all about and see how you can get involved and be the help another person or group be the treasure hunter, or whether a family next door who sorely needs that type of interaction in their life. There's a place for you. They say it takes a village, and it certainly takes a community. In St. Lucie County, we're really blessed to have all of these treasured people in our lives. So if people need to reach you again, Kevin, with all of us kind of working from home and not being in person, God bless Zoom and the other different types of ways that we can communicate. And the phone calls, people can call you, or they can touch base with you, or they can text you. And the phone number again?
772-979-1575.
979-1575. You've been listening to the Sue Ellen Sanders Show, and my guest today has been Kevin Singletary. He is, again, the Kids at Hope coordinator for the Roundtable of St. Lucie County. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll see you next week with more.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie.